Welcome back to Strong, everybody. I'm so excited to bring another incredible guest to our episode. Today, we are zooming out to London where we meet Jessika. Jessika is originally from Quebec, Canada, so I'm really excited to be talking to a fellow Canadian, and she'll be sharing all aspects of her life from working through her travel blog to living with some of her mental health issues. And we're going to be talking about everything to do with life over in London through the eyes of Jessika. Welcome, Jessika.
Hi, thank you so much for having me here and allowing me to be on your platform to share a little bit of my life.
I'm so excited to have you here, and I'm even more excited that we're going to be talking about how your work has also created a platform for sharing your experiences of life with, of course, your followers, and I think that's very, very inspiring. Let's go back to probably a few years ago for you. What brought you over to London? What attracted you, leaving Canada, what attracted you to life in the UK?
Oh, so that's a very funny one. I was always attracted by the abroad. My dream when I was a little girl was to live in New York. Like that was the absolute dream. And I think my parents knew that I was never going to stay in Canada. But my spouse and we met in high school, basically. And we've been living all around the world together. So we were living in Paris then, and we were studying, and he wanted to go to Hong Kong for work. Basically, we were graduating. We needed to go somewhere. And I wanted to go to London because I really thought I wanted to be closer to home. I thought Hong Kong was a bit too far. And we said, the first person who gets a job, that's where we're moving. And I got the job. And I just think I needed to be somewhere where it was not a city of judgment. I think London is very open-minded, which in France sometimes there's a lot of social standard in France, and I wasn't ready yet to go back to Canada, basically. So it's not about leaving behind a beautiful maple syrup country. It's more about exploring the world. And I think it's really good to be based in Europe as well, to travel around the world. So
I completely agree with you. And how do you find living abroad now? What kind of cultural experiences have you found have really enlightened your global awareness? And when do you think you're ready to bring that essence of life back to Canada, or do you see yourself going back to Canada?
I definitely see myself going back to Canada. I would love, love, love to have a farm with loads of space. I think living in a city is really fun, but I'm sure you can agree, as Canadians, we are used to have some sort of easy access to nature, which sometimes living here in Europe, it's kind of harder to have access to that nature. Just going to ski, for example, is so complicated here. So I definitely see myself when I have a family back in Canada, because that's my root, that's what I know, and it's like my culture. But yeah, for now we're just living to explore, and we're still young, so we're just transitioning. But there's definitely that piece of home is always going to be a home, and for now we just wanted to really experience. And I think, to go back to your question, you said what kind of cultural experience has enlightened you and stuff like that. I think it's humbling to travel and to experience different cultures. It's really open-minding, and that's something everyone needs. It it removes a lot of prejudice. It removes a lot of kind of, yeah, things that you would think, and it opens your mind so much. And when you have a more open mind, I think you become a kinder person. So for me, traveling is always important because I get humbled every day, and living abroad has taught me that my reality was not necessarily everyone's reality, which is one of the best things that you can learn.
Incredible. I can almost imagine young 20 somethings graduating from university in Paris. The world is your oyster, and where are you going to go? But I know that that adventure also brought some instability in terms of your mental health. Can you talk to us a little bit about on that journey? When did you start to feel something wasn't quite right?
So I was in university in Paris, and there was something like really big that happened in my family. Someone attempted suicide that was very close to me, and it kind of went downhill from there. um, so I was really, really having a hard time focusing, and school was tough. I couldn't do my oral presentation because I would just burst into tears because, when you have an emotional moment inside of you and you go do something stressful, your body reacts in ways that you can't really control. And then there was the terrorist attack in Paris. So I was living there when that happened, and I didn't leave my house for a few days. And that's when I started seeing a therapist because I needed to leave my house. And through these moments, I started realizing that something was up because my recovery wasn't straight. Then when I graduated school, I took my first internship, and after 1 month, I did a burnout um, and entered into a depression. And from there, it just started to be a cycle. So every time I was under a lot of stress, I would do a depression. And I was like, there's something up. It's not normal that it always comes back. You have people who have chronic depression, you have people who have one-time depressions, and then you have some mental illness like bipolar that you get depressive episodes that just come back. So back then we only thought I had chronic depressions. And eventually I started realizing that I was also having these really, really high moments where I would spend a lot of money without a care in the world. And this is something I never thought of talking to anyone, because when you're happy and things go well, you don't have a red flag, right? Things are going well, you're really happy. And I didn't realize that this extreme happiness was maybe too extreme. But eventually, with my therapist, we decided to speak about it to a doctor. I ended up in front of a psychiatrist, and I was diagnosed with bipolar type 2, which means that I have more depressive episodes than a manic episode. So I only have hypomania, which is kind of a lower manic episode, so it's not fully blown, which I'm thankful for, because fully blown mania is really, really difficult to deal with. But I was diagnosed with that, and from there I started having my journey of medicating, and since then, it's been well. I still do suffer from depressive episode, and I sometimes I'm going to be in bed and not shower for for a week or two, but at the end of the day, I'm happy I know what I have, and I'm happy I found the right medication.
And I'm hearing you say that you were working alongside your therapist. So anybody watching this now needs to understand that you didn't self-diagnose. This was professionally diagnosed, and you were obviously taken through tests to ensure that this was the correct diagnosis. Now, what's it like to be living with this uncertainty of you don't know what is going to be the next emotion? In what I'm hearing you say, it's almost like you can be happy one day and then the next day it could be completely different, or even in the next few minutes. How is it to live like that, knowing that something could trigger you and you could have an onset? How does that work with your life and your career and your relationship?
So I'm quite lucky because the type of bipolar I have is not quick. So you have people who have a type of bipolar, and I don't remember the name, so I'm not gonna gonna go there. Which people kind of cycle really quickly, and that's gonna be like few days and stuff like that. So you're depressive for like a week, and then you're happy. But I'm quite lucky in a sense because mine is episodes longer, so it's going to be months. So I'm going to be depressed for months, and then I'm going to be happy for a few weeks. And then, so my depressive episodes are always longer than my manic episode. And that's the thing about bipolar. I think a lot of people think our emotions switch very quickly, when in reality it's really about episodes. And sometimes you do have mixed episodes where it's going to happen quicker because you're in that phase that both are kind of happening at the same time, which I had recently. And my psychiatrist was really, really nice enough to me to explain to me what was going on, because I was like, I cry one day and then the next day I'm like super happy. What's up with that? Because I never had it before. But he explained to me that because we were regulating my medication, it kind of created a mixed episode. And regarding how it's affecting my life, I would say that being diagnosed hasn't changed anything, right? So I'm the same person. Obviously, it's nice to have a name on it. For my relationship, I'm lucky enough to have someone who's really supportive. And even with my friends and everything, everyone around me is understanding. So for example, I've had a really, really deep depressive episode that led me to be in the hospital. And my spouse since then has been working from home, just so that he can monitor me, because that was the doctor's kind of order. If he wasn't home, I would have had to stay hospitalized, but because he could be home, basically, we're doing that. So he's been really supportive in that sense, and he's really understanding. When I'm not okay, he's there. I think it helps a lot to have that extra person. It hasn't affected my relationship in any bad way. I think my spouse knew me and he knew my personality, and just the fact to put a name on what was going on with me hasn't changed who I am. And I think this is really important. Your diagnosis doesn't define who you are. So that hasn't changed. But I do feel that if I talk about it to broader circles, people are uncomfortable, which is something that I find quite odd, because if you say I broke my arm, no one is like, she broke her arm. But if you say like I have bipolar or something like that, people are really like, why are you telling me this? Like, it's like they're not supposed to know. And personally, the way that I see it, it's like anything.
I really appreciate that you mentioned how it's like an unspoken understanding that conditions of mental health are supposed to be secret. We're not supposed to be talking about it. It's almost like if we talk about it, it might be contagious. And I know that you're now using your social channel, Another Blonde Traveler, to not only talk about the great moments and the great experiences of your life, but also to talk about what it's like to be you on particular days. What was the driving factor behind the honesty of your posts in knowing that in real time, people are not receptive? They're not really open to talking about these things. Why did you think that going on your social channel, you might have a different impact on society?
So there's two factors. The first one is plain and simple. Sometimes I disappear for months. So I kind of needed to justify what was going on, because if I don't post, it's not because I stopped loving my community or I stopped. It's just literally going out of bed is a challenge. So I'm not going to start posting on Instagram and interacting with people when I'm feeling down. And then the second part is, as I just said, I noticed that when I spoke to people about what was going on with me, people kind of received it in a weird manner. And it kind of pissed me off, to be fair, because I was like, it doesn't change anything. It's literally just a name. And then I kind of was like, you know what? I'm just going to start talking about it on my social media. There was also a lot of misconception. Like, a lot of people thought that if they irritated me just a little bit, I would snap at them, just because the term bipolar is associated with people who like have extreme mood really quickly, when in reality, that's not true, right? And I just wanted to kind of break the stigma around it. And I was like, I'm going to use my audience, my channel, what I've grown, to talk about it. And if people are not happy, they can just unfollow, right? Like I'm not forcing anyone to look at what I have. And of course, people follow me for travel content. So of course there was a bit of a dip when I started talking about mental health with my engagement. But then I also saw a lot of support, especially from fellow people in the community. I think it's something that a lot of people are scared to talk about. I know a lot of influencers that have anxiety and other issues like that, but they don't want to talk about it because they want to create that really happy place. But then for me, it was about being real and just I don't want to showcase that irrealistic life. um, I'm not always pretty dressed in front of a nice building. That's just not the reality of it. This is curated. I think a lot of people don't understand how curated Instagram photos are and how much time goes into thinking of the outfit, the location, and everything. It's not like I'm walking in the street and I take a photo as a tourist, right? So a lot of people, they compare themselves, and I wanted to show that I'm human and I have flaws, as well as show that having mental problem is not actually like a problem, right? It's just something, it's a reality. And some people are never going to have like severe mental illness in their life, but they should still understand to be able to support those around them who has them. So it was just to shine a light basically on what was going on and to try to make people not react the way some people reacted around me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd like to take you back to, you mentioned a trauma in your family when you were talking about when this all came to light for you. I know that the mention of suicide is a topic that many parents are uncomfortable having, educators are uncomfortable having, but it's happening, it exists, and it's not something that we should be pretending doesn't happen. And I know that many people, again, are afraid of talking about it because if we talk about it, maybe we're encouraging this type of experience. Do you feel that member of your family who brought this to light for you had an impact in your mind? What was it that made you feel that it was something that tipped you over into a really darker place for yourself?
It was that it was someone that I really, really seen as strong. And it's the fact that that person never showed weakness. So it came really as a surprise, to be honest. And I've had a discussion with that person. And I've said, you should have shown us weakness. You should have shown us that you're human, right? Because coming to the realization that someone is not as strong as they come with a suicide attempt is really, really strong. It's like a bus hits you in the face. But if I would have seen that family member cry throughout my life, and I would have seen their weaknesses, and I could have helped them throughout their journey. But there's that thing that people need to be so strong that we hide our feelings, which can lead to big situations like this. So that's why it was really hard for me. It's because I wasn't aware of anything that was going on. So it came as a surprise. And then I was abroad on top of it. I couldn't be with my family. So it was just a lot of emotions. But I do feel that if someone is not okay, you should let the people around you know. And they're going to be more supportive than you think they were going to be. I think if you allow yourself to be a bit vulnerable, you're going to be surprised by how people are actually supportive and understanding.
Do you find yourself doing that as well? Do you find yourself being really, really transparent with those people around you when you do need help, or are you feeling that because I heard you say, when I'm not feeling well, when I'm feeling low, I don't want to be posting. I don't want to be interacting with people. Do you feel that when you are in that state that you you don't reach out, that you kind of hide out until you feel stronger? Or are you someone that reaches out in those darker moments asking for help?
It's a mix of both. So sometimes I don't want to be a burden, like that feeling of having something that comes back all the time. I'm just like, for example, with my spouse, I'm just like, oh my God, he must be so tired of it. I'm not going to border him with my bad day, which is what led me to be hospitalized, to be honest, because, it was just, I was trying to hide it from him because he was stressed at work. And I was just like, listen, and then it came to a really, really dark place, which led to suicide attempt on my hand as well. But then most of the time I'm really transparent about it. And I think if one thing I've learned from that experience last year is that I need to keep being transparent, because you get scared of yourself and when you get in these dark places. So now I think my surrounding has become really good at seeing the warning signs as well. So if I'm not good one day, my spouse notices right away and he's like, you're not okay. And then I'm like, no, I'm fine. And he's like, no, you're not okay. And then I'm like, okay, I'm not okay. And he's like, do you want to talk about it? So I've created a safe space. But sometimes I'm just going to open up. I think it really depends on the day. So I'm not, I'm preaching for people to talk about it, but I'm not perfect either. I don't always talk about it, which I should, to be honest.
So, what are the warning signs for anybody watching this that might be feeling something might not be so aligned with what things should be like? What you mentioned, you attempted suicide, and that you're now able to identify those warning signs. What are those warning signs?
Yeah, I think, as you said, for me, because they're definitely different for everyone. I think for me, I'm going to be in my head a lot. I'm someone who's really bubbly and outgoing. So if I stop talking, it's not a good sign. So if my spouse notices that I'm really in my head and I don't talk a lot, and he's gonna come up to me and be like, "Okay, what's going on?" And for me internally, I notice it when I start hating myself. So that's something that. I have a really hard problem, and I think everyone has their own issues. But my biggest issue is that, as my therapist would put it, I'm my worst enemy. So I put standards for myself that are like here, which are not obtainable. And I always bring myself in a place of failure. So because my standards are so high, and then when I don't obtain these standards, I go in a dark place. And then I start having negative thoughts about myself. So I can notice when I start having like, oh, you suck, or, those kinds of thoughts, I notice that I'm heading downhill. And now I'm able to contact my psychiatrist and my therapist and be like, listen, something's off. Also, and this I think is generalized for everyone, you start crying for absolutely no reason. Like, your toaster is going to go off and you're just going to start crying. Depressions make you very, very sensitive to your emotions. So if I see that I'm starting to cry, I'm starting to hate myself, I can't concentrate, I know that I'm not heading in the right direction and I need to seek for help.
Jessika, I'm listening to you, and I'm struggling. I'll be very honest with you. I'm struggling to, you come across as so strong, and I'm struggling to see the vulnerability underneath the image of strength. And you are exactly a role model for what we see all the time, what you described as your relative as well, somebody that came across as so strong. So somebody watching this right now will be looking at you thinking, she's confident, she's beautiful, she's well-spoken. How can she be struggling with depression? How could she get to that dark place? What is it that we need to pay attention to as parents, as educators, as teenagers, so that we don't make assumptions about what we think the person is like even though they look like this on the outside, they look well put together?
This is a tough one. I think I would say never judge a book by its cover. I think everyone can be. So you never know what someone is going through. And this is why I preach kindness. I think never think that because someone is coming across strong and confident that they're okay. And for me, it's kind of a facade that I've put out throughout the years, right? I think a lot of my friends have said you're really good at faking that you're okay. Especially like with Olivier, who's my spouse, I'm fine. I can be vulnerable, but with my surrounding, a lot of my friends, they're like, you're very good at putting it up. So never think that because someone is happy and confident and that they're just okay. Everyone has their struggle. And that's important to remember. And that's why I think it's so important to be kind to everyone around you, because you never know what people are going through. And also to show that you're listening to the people that you're close, and to be open-minded. So I wouldn't say that there's some warning signs that can apply to everyone. I wouldn't know them, but what I know is that if you're kind to everyone, that you show that you're listening. If someone appears as strong, like you can have deep conversations with them, and if the subject comes up or something like that, you can be like, oh, if you show that you're vulnerable, people are more likely to open up. So you can be like, oh, last week I was feeling a bit low, and then you explain, and then you're like, do you ever have these moments? And then maybe the person's going to open up to you, and you're going to realize that deep down they have more, a more complicated life, because no one's life is perfect. I think it's just about being open-minded and seeing that no one is like strong and perfect. Everyone has their struggle. And the moment we start understanding that is the moment as a society that we're all going to be really, really close, and that we're going to start accepting mental illness a bit better, I think.
I agree. I totally agree. And I agree that we should be brave enough to be open and vulnerable. We should also normalize it for others, so that they feel comfortable in opening up to us. But I guess it will take time. Now, I also want to be celebrating the milestones that you've achieved in your life as well. And in celebrating those, I'd like you to take us through the clothing line that you have, and talk to us about your travel blog as well. Because what I want young people to see is it's all about being resilient through our life. Like you said, everybody has a story, everybody has a journey. And because we're struggling at one time with one aspect of our life doesn't mean that we'll always be that way. There are moments that we should be celebrating the amazing things we do. So talk to us about your clothing line, and talk to us about the amazing places that you traveled to with your travel blog.
Yeah, so my clothing line came from my mental health struggle, right? I wasn't working. It was right after a big depressive episode. I had just left my work, and then it started to be quarantine. And for 3 months, at the first 3 months of quarantine, I was in bed, not doing anything, which honestly it worked out so well for me, because I didn't have to justify myself to anyone to why I wasn't going out. Everyone was stuck at home. I was just like, this is like the perfect thing that could happen right now. And then after that, I started to be better, and I started to be like everyone, bored out of my life, because we're stuck at home. We don't know what to do. And I've always wanted to start a t-shirt line, and it's something I had talked with my best friend, and I decided that I needed to do something with a message, because it is so important. So I started designing t-shirts around positivity and mental health, which I'm proudly wearing one right now. And then from there, I just decided to do everything I could to make the project a reality. So I started saving money. I tried to do a Kickstarter, which didn't work, but that didn't stop me. I just launched a little bit smaller than I would have liked to. Um, and it was just to bring a light on how important positivity is, and also to break the stigma around mental health. I really wanted my line to support a mental health charity. So I contacted Mind UK and I was like, is there a way we can put together an agreement? So every t-shirt, there's £1 that goes to Mind UK, which is a mental health charity that we have here in the UK. And yeah, and that was the idea behind it. And honestly, the response I've been getting from that line, like people are like, I love your values, I love the idea behind it. And I'm quite surprised by how it picked up really well so far. Because I didn't expect, I expected it to be kind of slow, but I'm still seeing like almost one sale every day, which is something really great for a startup, I'm sorry. But but yeah, and just getting these messages, even if it's not from people who are customers, but just some people are like, I love what you stand for, I love your line. It's been truly motivating to keep me going. And yeah, I think I had a failure along the way with my Kickstarter not working, but you see, I pushed through, and I think it's important to keep going when you have things that don't work out. If you have an objective, you're going to have doors that close in front of you, and you just need to keep pushing through that. And for another blonde traveler, this is just sharing my passion. My biggest passion in life is traveling. Traveling is my therapy. It's okay. I still see my therapist, don't get me wrong, but it's like, it changes everything. And of course, like now it's been hard with not being able to travel for a year, but I just love seeing the world. As I said earlier, I think it opens my mind, it humbles me, it makes me connect with other human. It makes me taste amazing food that otherwise I would have never tasted. So I wanted to share that with people and kind of show people the importance of traveling for me through a lens. Of course, it's not. It's as I said, it's polished, but yeah, and the community grew. I think I started that as a creative outlet after my first real depression that I had after my first internship I mentioned earlier. And I saw that people were starting to follow. So I was still living in Paris back then. And so it was easy to create content, right? You're in Paris. What better place to take photos than Paris? It's so beautiful everywhere. And I started seeing people following it. And I was like, maybe I should give it a go. And so I just started taking photos when I travel, which has been really fun. And I have my spouse that takes my photo, who's just been really kind enough to do it, because he's not he doesn't have a creative bone in his body, but he's still doing it for me. So yeah, no, it's been two things that kind of helped me put my creativity somewhere, because I'm a really creative person, but I also have that more scientific oriented brain, so that I do it at work. I work in marketing, so I do like those like number stuff and everything at work, and then I let my creativity go basically with these two outlets.
That's so incredible, Jessika. I know why I asked you to be with me today and talk about your story. Why did you come today? What were you hoping to achieve from this conversation?
I honestly really liked the mission. When I saw the invitation, I was like, what is this? And then I started doing some research, and I really liked the mission that you're going for, and any platform, any ways that I can use my voice to break the stigma around mental health, by sharing my story, I will do. And I know that some people, for them, it's like quite shocking, and it's really I say a lot of vulnerable things, but it is important for me to show that as we said earlier, you never know what's happening behind the curtains. So that's why I wanted to come, to kind of help to break the stigma, to educate people as well, and to have a chat about it.
Thank you so much, Jessika. I'm so happy you did. I'm so happy you did. I can talk to you forever. I can ask you so much, but I know that we need to bring it to a close. And just thank you for being here, Jessika. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
And that brings us to the end of another incredible conversation. Today we were speaking with Jessika, who's currently based in London, and we were talking about all things life through the eyes of Jessika. We met her through her incredible story of vulnerability and her incredible story of strength. And the mission that she is on is to help normalize mental health issues. Let's start talking about these issues. Let's start helping people feel comfortable to talk about these issues. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next week when we bring another incredible guest to Strong.
You're not alone. I wanna tell